A research instrument is a tool used to collect, measure, and analyze data related to your research interests. These tools are mostly used in health sciences, social sciences, and education. The research instrument is usually determined by the researcher and is tied to their study methodology. There are two types of data collection techniques. We could use the quantitative data collection techniques and qualitative data collection techniques depending on what type of research you're going to use in your study. For the quantitative data collection techniques, we have observation, survey, experiment, and content analysis. The observation in terms of quantitative data collection is gathering information or facts through watching or listening or through your sensory profile of the researchers and then record the results using the numbers. We have two types for the observation. We have direct observation, which is using the senses of the researchers like seeing, hearing, touching the sources of data personally. Indirect observation is when you see and hear the information through any technological or electronic gadgets. Survey is using questionnaire. You're going to obtain those information through the use of questionnaire. With the experiment, you will have an item or a product that was given a treatment for any condition, and then your participants will evaluate the result of your developed item. Content analysis is by searching through several oral or written forms of communication to find answers to your research questions. We have what we call adapted and adapted instruments with an O and an A. When an instrument is adapted with an O, it is important to appropriately describe the instrument in the research instrument section of the chapter 3. You have to include who developed the instrument, who validated the instrument, and other studies that have used the instrument. Adapted instruments with an O means that you copied the existing questionnaire or the validated questionnaire per verbatim. Kung ano yung nakalagay dun sa mismong questionnaire, kung ano yung mga words, kung ano yung mga choices, yun din ang inilagay doon sa mga questionnaire na ginamit ninyo for your study. With the adapted questionnaire with an A, or adapting an instrument, it requires more substantial changes than adapting an instrument with an O. In this situation, the researcher follows a general design of another instrument but adds items, removes items, and or substantially changes the content of each items. Because adapting an instrument, so that is adapting with an A, is similar to developing a new instrument. And it is important that a researcher understand the key principles of developing an instrument. When an instrument is adapted with an A, the researchers should report the same information in the research instrument section as when adapting the instrument. Adapting with an O, but should also include what changes were made to the instruments and why. Whenever possible, it is best for an instrument to be adapted with an O. When it is not possible, the next best option is to adopt the one with an instrument. However, if there are no other instruments available, then the last option is to develop an instrument for your study. When developing a questionnaire, we always have to remember the three parts. However, it will always depend on the institution that you are currently in when you're doing the research. But the basic for developing a questionnaire has three parts. You have to include general instructions, personal information, and the body. The general instructions includes introduction of the researcher, purpose of the questionnaire, confidentiality statement, voluntary participation, how to submit the questionnaire. For the introduction of researcher, you could include what is your name, what is the institution are you affiliated with. For example, my name is blank and I am completing a research study from the blank. What is your institution or your school or organization? The purpose of the questionnaire is the reason why you are conducting the questionnaire. You should also take some caution with this statement. Sometimes the introduction will state the purpose of this research, for example, is to identify the academic malpractices that students engage in. This example statement will likely put students on their guard and will not be honest in how they respond. Instead, they will only give a vague general description of the purpose of the questionnaire. There should be a less biasing statement that should be indicated on the purpose of the questionnaire. One ethical consideration of research is that participants' responses are confidential, and the participants also need to know this. For example, your responses will be confidential, and then if it is possible for the participant to complete the questionnaire anonymously, that means that they do not have to write their name on the questionnaire. You could also indicate, do not write your name on this questionnaire, so your responses will never be linked to you personally. However, as described on the research ethics, this is not always possible. So if the participants needs to write their name on the questionnaire, you could add on your survey form or on the questionnaire, only the researchers involved in this study will see your responses. And you should also be specific about who are those researchers. Voluntary participation is another ethical consideration of research, which is the participants are not forced to engage in the research study. And the participants needs to be aware that they do not have to complete the questionnaire, and also they do not have to answer any items they feel uncomfortable with. For example, you could indicate your participation in this study is voluntary. If you do not want to participate, please return the questionnaire to the researcher. You also do not have to answer any question that makes you uncomfortable. How to submit the questionnaire? If the researchers will not be present the entire time that the participant will be completing the questionnaire, tell them how they could return the questionnaire to the researcher. You could also indicate on the questionnaire, please return the completed survey form to the office blank, or where they could return the questionnaire. However, as much as possible, if you are giving a questionnaire to your participants, always make yourself present. So you will be available as a researcher, and if ever there will be questions from the participants, you could answer it immediately. Part of the general instruction also includes the title of the questionnaire, just as the directions should not lead participant to a desired response. This is the sample of the general instructions. There is the title for the questionnaire, the purpose, confidentiality statement, and voluntary participation, and how to submit the questionnaire. The second part of the questionnaire, or developing the questionnaire, is personal information. The specific personal information items should be indicated here, and there are a few formatting points that needs to be made regarding the information. The label response options for the encoding. If you want to analyze your data on the computer, then you will need to code the data. What do you mean by coding the data? You just have to give categories for your questionnaire. And briefly, the general idea of coding is to attach symbols to responses. For example, you won't want to type 3 male or 4 words for the male, for every male in the sample. Instead, it is easier to attach a symbol to the male response. You could include the letter A or letter M or the number 1. Therefore, it is oftentimes easiest to add a label to each response, like a multiple choice test. For example, what is your age? On the letter A, under 10 years old. Letter B, 10 years old to 11 years old. Letter C, 12 years old to 13 years old. And letter D, 14 to 15, or F, 18 or older. Then when entering the data in the computer, you can just simply type letter A, B, and C. For the number 2 points or ideas for indicating the personal information, you have to instruct participants to circle, not tick. So this is better in terms of personal information. On other parts of the questionnaire, you could already use the tick, but for the personal information, it is best to use circle or encircle the following responses or the appropriate responses. Asking participants to tick the responses can lead to confusion on what was really the intended response. In the item number 3, the third part in developing a questionnaire is the body of the questionnaire. It already includes your questions that should be related on your statement of the problem. We have 3 reminders in making the body of questionnaire. First, general directions for responding. Second, how to respond. And third, explain the response categories. General directions for responding is when the participants need a general idea of what to expect for the items. that they will soon be responding to. They could also write a statement or two to prime them for what to expect in subsequent items. For example, you could include a statement in the questionnaire about the teacher's beliefs for literacy development. And you could indicate the following items describe statements about children learning how to read. The second reminders is how to respond. What are the instructions that you could give to your participants when they were asking or they were answering your questions about the study? For example, should the participants circle the responses? Are they going to tick their agreement, or are they going to pick 2 or 3 out of the list that is representing them? And the third one is to explain the response categories. Oftentimes, there are questionnaires that does not explain the strongly agree, disagree. It only includes the abbreviation until the very end of the questionnaire. And not all the participants know about these indicators or about these ratings. Your participants will not understand if you will only put SA, or for example you will only put SD. You have to indicate what is the SD meaning and what is its corresponding number. If it's for number 1, for the disagree, it's number 2. For the SA, which is strongly agree, it is on the number 3. Para pag nakita agad ng mga participants, alam na nila, meron ng label bago pa sila magsagot doon sa inyong magiging mga questions. We have to keep the questionnaire short and clear for the participants. And do not give them too much information that they do not need to avoid any confusion. Scales of measurement in research and statistics are the different ways in which the variables are defined and grouped into different categories. Sometimes called the level of measurement, it describes the nature of the values assigned to the variables in a dataset. The term scale of measurement is derived from 2 keywords in statistics, namely measurement and the scale. The measurement is the process of describing some property of a phenomenon by assigning numbers. It is also a process of recording observations collected as part of the research. Scale or scaling is a type of composite measure composed of several items that have a logical or empirical structure among them. It is also the assignment of objects to numbers or any semantics. These two words merged together refers to the relationship among the assigned objects and the recorded observation. A measurement scale is used to qualify or quantify data variables in statistics. It also determines the kind of techniques to be used for statistical analysis. We have different kinds of measurement scales, and the type of data being collected determines the kind of measurement scale to be used for statistical measurement. These measurement scales are namely nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio scale. We also have different types of scales that we could use for our questionnaires. We have the Likert scale, semantic differential scale, staple scale, graphic rating scale, Thurstone scale, Gatman scale, paired comparison scale, forced choice, and comparative scale. For the Likert scale, it is designed to examine how strongly subjects agree or disagree with statements on a 5-point scale. There are also other descriptive ratings for the Likert scale that can be used depending on the questions that you have on your statement of the problem or the questions that you will use for your research and to answer the research problems. Semantic differential scale is a several bipolar attributes which are identified at the extremes of the scale, and the respondents are asked to indicate their attitudes. Like on the example that we have, there are enjoyable, unenjoyable, simple, complex. For the staple scale, this scale simultaneously measures both the direction and the intensity of the attitude towards the items under study. It is a slight modification of semantic differential scale because the scale consists of single adjective in the middle of positive and negative numbers. So there are positive numbers on the top of the adjectives and the negative numbers are in the bottom of the adjectives. Graphic rating scale is a graphical representation that helps the respondents to indicate their answers to a particular questions by placing a mark at the appropriate point on the line. You will already see this at the Alpha Mart or in any call center that uses survey to evaluate their customer satisfaction. Next is the Thurstone scale. Thurstone scale uses a technique that assesses the extent of agreement among a group of judges about the proposed items for the scale. So there are two categories, the A and B, and there are numbers that would indicate the answers of the respondents. It could be numbers, it could be letters, or it could also be the line. Next is the Gatman scale. It determines who agrees with an item. And then for those agreements that the respondents indicated on their questionnaire, it will be recorded. You could record it in for the first participant who have a lot of numbers or who have number of items with an agreement. For example, the respondent number 3, they agreed with all of the items indicated, which has a 7 score. And then respondent number 6, they only agreed for 6 items. And then respondent number 1 is for 5 items only. The next scale is paired comparison scale, which the respondents are asked to choose between two objects at a time. So, for example, they could choose BMW or Porsche or Chevrolet. And the fourth choice enables the respondents to rank objects relative to one another among the alternatives provided. With the comparative scale, it provides a benchmark or a point of reference to assess the attitudes towards the current objective or event or any situation under study. For example, compared to your previous hair dryer's performance, the new hair dryer that you have is it superior, about the same, or inferior? The measurement scales for quantitative data have four. We have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. The nominal scale is a scale measurement that is used for identification purposes. Sometimes it is called categorical scale, and it assigns numbers to attributes for easy identification. Those numbers are, however, not qualitative in nature and only act as labels. Ginagamit yun para sa mga code ng mga answers ng kanilang respondents or participants. The only statistical analysis that can be performed on a nominal scale is a percentage or frequency count. You could analyze this graphically through a bar chart or a pie chart. The ordinal scale involves the ranking or ordering of the attributes depending on the variable being scaled. And yung mga items in these scales are classified according to their degree of occurrence in the variable ng inyong mga questions. The attributes on an ordinal scales are usually arranged in ascending or descending order. And it also measures the degree of occurrence. Pwede siya gamitin sa mga market research, advertising, o kaya yung customer satisfaction surveys, the ordinal scale. Meron din siya mga qualifiers like yung mga very, highly, more or less, na nagpapakita ng mga extent or na degree. In ordinal scale, we can perform statistical analysis like median, mode, pero we are not using mean. However, there are other statistical alternatives na pwedeng gamitin kay mean that can be measured using the ordinal scales. Interval scales is a scale in which the levels are ordered and each numerically equal distances on the scale have equal interval differences. If it is an extension of the ordinal scale with the main difference being the existence of equal intervals. With an interval scale, so you not only know that a given attribute A is bigger than the other attribute B, but also the extent at which A is larger than B. So, yun is an example. Unlike ordinal and nominal scales, arithmetic operations can be performed on an interval scale. A ratio scale naman, or for example, dun sa mga arithmetic na computations na yun, the interval scale, we could use the mean, median, mode, range, and standard deviation. For the ratio scale, it is the peak level of data measurement. Kasi it is an extension din ng interval scale. Ibig sabihin, meron siya lahat na characteristics nitong tatlo or ng nominal scale. Meron siyang characteristic ni nominal, meron siyang characteristic ni ordinal, and ni interval. And yung sarili niyang characteristics ni ratio. Ano yung mga characteristics na yan? Meron siyang sariling identity, pwede siya maglagay ng mga categories, magnitude, meron siyang equal interval, and meron din siyang point zero or absolute zero property. This is a level of data measurement which allow the researchers to compare both the differences and yung mga relationships ng mga numbers. If it's using the market research, yung common ratio scale are the prices, number of customers, competitors. And if it's using the other statistical analysis methods, we could use the central tendency or the mean, median, mode, and yung mga range, standard deviation. So this is the examples and the meaning of the types of measurement scales. We can also use qualitative data collection techniques if you are using a qualitative type of research. In qualitative, we could use observation, which is you can gather data personally through watching or interacting or communicating with the subjects of your research. For the types of observation in qualitative data collection, we have two, the participant observation and the non-participant or structured observation. In the participant of your observation, the researcher will also do the activities or will take part in the activities of the participants or the respondents. And with the experiences that the researcher have, they are going to record it on a diary method or logbook. The first part on that logbook will have the descriptive observation, and the second part is the narrative account or the narrative observation. Non-participant or structured observation, the researcher will just observe. They are just going to watch and listen without participating in any of the activities of the respondents. And the recording of those information or the data will be through a checklist or observation schedule. We can also use interview in qualitative data collection, and it is verbally ask the subjects or the participants question so they could answer it immediately to what your research study is trying to look for. We have types of interview, the structured, unstructured interview, and semi-structured interview. The structured interview has a guided questions. The unstructured interview has no guided questions. Kung ano yung naisip ng inyong mga interviewers, yun ang itatanong sa inyo or ng mga researchers, yun ang itatanong doon sa mga participants. The semi-structured interview, they are using the guided questions, pero pag meron silang naisip na other questions which is not included on their questionnaire or interview guide, magtatanong din sila or itatanong din nila doon sa kanilang participant. We have three interview approaches: the individual interview, group interview, and mediated interview. For the individual interview, only one respondent is interviewed. And the reason behind this one-on-one interview is the interviewees are not comfortable with other participants or with other respondents when they are giving any information that they want to share with the researchers. Group interview, in this kind of interview approach, you will ask questions not only to one person but to a group of people at the same time. The group members takes turns in answering the question. And this approach is often used in the field of business. Mediated interview, it means no face-to-face interview in this approach because it takes place through electronic communication devices such as telephone or mobile phone, email, or the applications such as Zoom, Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams. Though mediated interview disregards nonverbal communication, for example, the bodily movements, the gestures, feelings, eye contact, it is considered better because a big number of respondents that is capable of reaching despite the distance can also participate in the interview. We have 6 steps in conducting an interview. We have to get to know each other, the interviewer and the interviewees having an idea of the research, starting the interview, conducting the interview proper, putting an end to interview, pondering over interview afterthoughts. The interviewers or the researchers should also take time to know their interviewees or their participants. The interview starts from the time the researchers set it and the time that the researchers and the respondents see each other at the place of interview, if that is a traditional interview. And seeing each other for the first time, their tendency would be to talk with each other to establish friendship and a relaxed mode for both of you, although in some cases, the place is your respondent's residence. You have to show signs of appreciation and respect for the chosen venue of the interview. You could also you could use some warm acknowledgements for each other and must lead you to discussing several aspects of the interview. Having an idea of the research is the second step that requires the researchers to tell the respondents what are their purpose, what is the importance of that interview, and what will be the scope. And the researchers should tell the respondents of the salient features of the activity, which will enable them to anticipate not only the kind of questions they will get to face, but also the appropriate answers that they will give. The things pertaining to the confidential treatment of responses are also tackled in this second step of interview. It is also in this period when you have to stress the idea of the respondents that the interview is for them or for the researchers to know and hear their own views and to let them express their own understanding of the topic, of the question in their own words. And of course, after that, you can now start your interview. You can open this step with a question to encourage the respondent to talk about himself or herself, including their demographic profile, like the age, occupation, current activities, and the following these self-introduction questions are questions on the subject thoughts, attitudes, or performance, or any information about them. The respondent's answer do not only help you get some clues on his or her ways or techniques of responding to interview questions, but also will give you hints on the right ways to ask your subject the questions that will elicit the right data for your research. And then you can now conduct the interview properly. In this step, you can already ask your interview questions. You could also make a clue for your respondents or participants. You could let them know that you will ask the last questions, so they will have also an idea that your interview is about to end. And pondering over interview afterthoughts, this is the last step of the interview that gives the respondents the opportunity to ask questions about the interview activity and let him or her have an idea about what will happen next to the interview results. So that is all for the research instrument.